Folks, if they have the opportunity specifically on the weekend to listen to a scanner, you could go on the internet and there's scanner apps, and you can listen to what's going on in the city of Chicago right now. She only has a few minutes, but I think she wanted to weigh in. Claudia Tenney, the Congresswoman, joining us here on the Talk of the Town. Good morning, Claudia. How are you?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Is my reception okay? Because you're skipping with me, but if I sound okay, that's all right.
You sound fine so far.
I always wanted to skip with you, Claudia. We'll go skipping.
Not an amused laugh.
All right, let's skip right to it, I guess.
You don't want to skip with me. Somebody else.
Claudia, what's on your mind? Reaction, response to this charter communication situation?
Yeah, I think it's hard to get my message out, and I know I get a chance to call on Wednesday, and the OD just, no matter how, they've got the article already written. It's already a pre-done propaganda piece for my opponent, and then they call me and say, oh, we need a comment right away, and here, what's your comment? And I didn't happen to be available. But here's the biggest concern I have with this whole Spectrum issue. I don't get good service to Spectrum either. It's expensive. There's a lot of problems, and that's what you get when the government reaches in, like Governor Cuomo did, and Anthony Brindisi supported this, and creates a monopoly where the consumer doesn't have a choice. They have one entity that's a corporation that is given a monopoly status, and then guess what? You're going to get terrible service. You're not going to have competition that's going to drive down price, demand quality, and you're going to get the government trying to run everything. And that's why I'm opposed to the whole utility concept. It's a form of corporatism, which is not good for consumers, and that's why the consumers are suffering from this. And yes, there is a labor dispute, and there is a dispute because apparently Charter, which is the one that controls Spectrum, apparently they converted from a pension system to a 401k, though they gave raises out to their employees. So the union has been on strike because they're opposing the changeover in the type of retirement plan. And so that's what's going on. And the governor is getting in the middle of it. And now Anthony Brindisi is trying to use this. The governor is basically bullying this company, which it's being forced to do things that the governor wants them to do instead of the governor helping with the infrastructure. If you really want to be, a public-private partnership, then do it. So I do think it is really disingenuous of both of them to now be attacking this company, which, by the way, they're not doing a very good job. I mean, I agree. And I think that they should have competition. That's what we should do. That's how you solve the problem.
How could you effectively have competition for cable company in the area? Is there any way you can think of that would be an effective way of fostering competition?
There's companies all over the country. There's companies all over New York have been pushed out of the marketplace. Everyone's getting into this broadband. You have a local company, Northland Communications. You have all kinds of companies out there that are serving other parts. But because the governor wants to control and manipulate everything, he turned them into basically a public utility to provide this service, which should be done by the private sector.
So they would have to get permission. They'd have to get permission through the state if they wanted to operate.
Everyone. Yeah, they're regulated by the PSC,
right.
But the PSC is now manipulated and controlled mostly by the governor. I mean, we have a governor that is out of control and has too much power and is just, hurting the residents of this state. And now, can you imagine any other company that's engaged in this type and any other similar business must be living in fear that the governor is going to come in and attack them too. And I'm not defending Spectrum. I personally don't like the service quality. I think they're expensive. I wish it were better, but I wish I had a choice. Right. But because of the governor and people like Anthony Brindisi who vote for this stuff, we don't have a choice. And that's the solution, is to give us a choice so we can have other options. I mean, other companies need to be incentivized to come in and provide the services that Spectrum's basically made a deal. We'll provide the service if you give us a monopoly.
So do you think it's a bad idea to kick Spectrum out then at this point?
Well, what are you going to do? You're going to bring in another monopoly that's going to have the same problems and the same issues, and now is going to be dependent on government, and now the governor is going to control, and pretty soon the governor is going to be controlling what goes on the news channel. Forget about Spectrum being able to decide to censor, which is a whole other issue. Imagine if the governor gets to decide, and that's exactly what net neutrality is. The government, and that's on the internet realm, the government gets to come in and regulate and decide who gets what, not the marketplace.
So how do we hold them accountable? There are obviously some issues. I've laid out a number of issues, I guess, throughout the state. How do we hold them accountable then, in a sense?
Well, you have to go back through the Public Service Commission, which regulates them. And I don't have a problem with them unfolding the monopoly, but now they've put the citizens at risk. The governor, in his own actions, in creating the monopoly, now creating the problem, and the company wasn't able to live up to it. Now he's going to go, what, are you going to bring another company in and create the same problem? They're going to face the same problems that Spectrum and Charter are facing in trying to build out into a rural area where there's not a lot of economic activity. Instead, assist other companies in getting the infrastructure they need to get to the rural community so they have access and they have a choice. I mean, it's just that's what you do. The PSC can unfold that. They can take the monopoly apart. I credit them for doing that. Definitely get rid of the monopoly. Give other companies a chance to come in and compete to drive the prices down, which will force Spectrum and others to have a lower price, a better quality, and more choice and more options for consumers, which we don't have right now.
Over the existing wires that we have, could you have more than one, and I don't know the answer to this, could you have more than one cable system so that we can say, I either want cable system A or cable system B in Utica, say, or in New Hartford where I live? I can say I want one of the other cable systems, and they can share the wires some way, and I can pick the one I want. Is it? I don't know. Can you do that?
They can do that, or you can also have, if a company wants to come in and build out into a rural area, you know, they can build out into that rural area, but more than one can do that, and you can have the line shared. I mean, that's how a lot of the lines that are on the telephone lines are done. They're shared, and there's a, you know, you'll pay for the line up to where the T point is, and then when you go into the interior, it'll be covered by, say, Northland Telephone, which will cover the services. You know, there's a lot of ways you can do that, but you don't have to have a monopoly by the way that the governor has created it. It's just like we have a casino monopoly. Only one entity can engage in casino gambling in a 10-county area. That's completely anti-competitive. That's got to be a violation of federal law. But the governor has been allowed to proceed in doing that because he controls it. He has the say on it. And that's where the biggest problem you have is when politicians and government can come in and control what the private market should be doing. And the private market should be regulated but not controlled by government.
Claudia, just before we run out of time, I wanted to run this past you. Your opponent, as you're well aware, has lodged this complaint against you, saying that your campaign and PAC have received $15,000 in donations from Charter. I know you fired back and said that Brindisi has received $10,000 from the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers that support the Charter merger, and he supported the Charter merger. So what's your response to the donations that he claims that your campaign and PAC have received from Charter?
Yeah, I don't even know how much I've received. I've seen two different accounts of it. I haven't looked at the account. They want someone who supports a non-monopoly situation. They want someone who supports private enterprise, and that's probably why their political action committee gave me money. But let me just point out one really important thing about his claim, and it's a totally false claim, that he says he won't take money from corporate PACs. He's taking millions of dollars from corporate PACs. It's a very non-transparent way of doing it. Nancy Pelosi's House Majority PAC would not give a dime to Anthony Brindisi if she thought he really wasn't going to support her. So what they do is the corporations like Oneida Indian Nation and a number of others, I mean, Ray Halberter has given millions to House Majority PAC, which is Nancy Pelosi's PAC. Many other private corporations give to the House Majority PAC, which in turn spends millions of dollars on ads. The problem is you don't know who gave to Nancy Pelosi's PAC on behalf of Anthony Brindisi. However, you can go right on my official FEC site, and you can find out exactly how much any corporation or corporate PAC, which, by the way, is made up of donations from employees who voluntarily